Before we begin our conversation, we'd like to inform our listeners that this episode contains intense subject matter that may be distressing to some. Welcome to Born Curious, where we lead with curiosity to explore the work happening here at Harvard Radcliffe Institute. I'm your co-host, Ivelisse Estrada.
And I'm your co-host, Heather Min.
Today, we welcome Diana Dabby, whose work is at the intersection of music and engineering.
Originally trained as a concert pianist, she later studied electrical engineering, and she's now using this science to innovate musical works that have variation at their center.
And on this episode, we welcome back our producer, Alan Grazioso, to serve as guest co-host. So take it away, Heather and Alan.
Diana Dabby is the music program director and a professor of electrical engineering at Olin College of Engineering and the 2024 to 2025 Lillian Golay-Knauffel Fellow at Harvard Radcliffe Institute. We are delighted to have you here.
It's a thrill to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, so Diana, thanks for taking the time. One question that I have right up front, your career has taken many turns, it seems. Could you tell us what led you on this path?
Yes, in a sense, I would almost say it's taken on many enhancements because every move that I make actually came from something very strong inside of me. I have always listened to my inner voice, and it's guided me through life. And I have a kind of track record with it. For those of you, and many of you already know your inner voice, and you gradually build a track record with it. And that happened with me. One day, I walked over to Lincoln Center Library. I was earning my living as a concert pianist in New York, and I just took a break from practicing and walked over there. And I saw a journal that I'd never seen before, and it was devoted all to music of the future. And I thought, I should take a look at this. And I didn't understand a word. The only thing I could understand was they had little biographies of each of the contributors. And I thought, I can read these. And every single one of them was an electrical engineer, a mathematician, a physicist, and also had an avid music avocation. And I thought, what would happen if a musician acquired the tools of engineer? I was so curious about that because if music had taught me anything, it was that depth has its rewards. And so I was pretty sure that if I acquired the language of engineering, that I would invent something. And I just could not say no to this. And I know that sounds pretty sudden, but in essence, I walked home, and in my building, which was a musician's building, lived another pianist, a dear friend of mine. And I knocked on her door and I just said, "What's an engineer?" And she said, "I have no idea." But we decided to look it up, and we did. And then there were so many varieties of engineer, chemical, electrical, civil, etc. And we still couldn't really put it together. And I said, I think if we acquired their tools, we would definitely invent something. Because here we were, professionals in New York. So we really had a deep understanding and connection with music on a professional level. And I actually signed up for courses at the City College of New York. They told me I was going to have to make up 135 credits because my undergraduate degree was in music and I had no science or math. And I went to City College. During the same year, I was playing concerts at home and abroad, but they would only allow me to take 3 courses. And that was a math course, Calculus 1, a chemistry course, and graphics.
I am curious what you were thinking when you thought I could invent something. What did you think that you would want to invent?
At the time, I didn't really know. I just had this absolute belief that if you acquired these 2 languages in a substantive way, one of which I already had, which was music, that you couldn't help but put them together and invent something. And it was on that very strong belief that I just went ahead with this. Amazingly, the piano and music actually taught me how to acquire and study electrical engineering and all the math that's involved in science.
Could you tell us more about how does music inspire engineering and vice versa?
Again, this is a story where I was now an electrical engineering student at City College of New York, and I was taking a course in transistors. And it was just Greek to me. I have to tell you, we had an exam coming up. It was a week away. And I called my cousin and I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm in big trouble. I don't understand a word. And he said to me, listen, Diana, what you're going to do is you're going to study this the same way you would prepare a concert. And all of a sudden, that kind of made sense to me. When I prepare a concert, I want to be able to go very freely once I'm on that stage. So what I do is I cover every single base in the practice room. And I have a whole series of exercises and practice techniques that I've evolved over many years that give me the biggest bang for the buck in terms of using your practice time really efficiently. And I also, I practice in bed, which I always love. That kicks in as well.
How do you do that?
Oh, it's wonderful. First of all, you don't have to get up for a while. So you just lie in bed and you go through the entire program. And I can feel my fingers. I can actually almost, it's as if the nerve endings are moving on my fingers. And I'm feeling all of that. I'm seeing the keyboard. I'm hearing all the music that's coming out. It's a very effective way of practicing. I do that a lot. I also do it when I'm composing. I'll just lie in bed or I'll go for a walk and I'll think, okay, here's where we are. Where do we want to go? And how are we going to get there? And I love that. I also do this when I was studying and still study, obviously, electrical engineering because I teach. And I'll go through that entire class that I'm going to give just lying in bed in my head. Now, sometimes, of course, I have to be somewhere much sooner. What happens is it happens in the car, it happens on the subway, it happens while I'm walking. And it's wonderful because you get, I guess people call it getting in the zone, but for me, it was just getting into the place. And it just prepares me. It's wonderful. And then when you are in front of that class or in front of that audience and you're making all that music and doing those wonderful discoveries that you're trying to get your class to understand and hopefully get as excited about those discoveries as you are, it just all comes out. It's beautiful.
Amazing. Our culture, we have so much coming at us, so many possibilities of distractions to take up our mind space. But what I hear you saying is that you said you have time that you do your thinking. Are you hearing it?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
You're hearing it, you're feeling like the nerve endings.
Everything.
So you're not physically with a keyboard in bed.
No,
right?
No.
It's your imagination, your mind visualizing.
Yeah, my ear and
your ear hearing it.
Everything is coming together.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So let's segue to your inventions. What are musical variation engines? How do they work? And what inspired you to invent or do work in that area?
Well, it was my first day at MIT as a graduate student, and I was in my very first class. And who comes up to me but the professor? And he handed me a journal. And it was an IEEE journal devoted to chaos science. He said, "You're an artist. What would you do with this?" And I took the journal home, and I can assure you, I did not understand every word in that journal. But something started resonating with my artistic side, and it was very strong that there was something in here for music. I didn't know what it was yet, but I was really sure. And I was also struck by the richness of this new science. And of course, music has such a rich language that what you can express, there are no limitations, frankly. So I decided I would learn everything I possibly could about chaos science and chaotic circuits in particular. And I'm reading it and something is so strong in me saying it's here. There's something here for music. So I started taking MIT's courses in chaos science. I actually did, for my master's thesis, I came up with a new chaotic circuit. I, just immersed myself in chaos science because obviously music, that language I spoke. Did I speak this language of chaos at the beginning? Absolutely not. But the more I learned it, the more convinced I was, indeed, there is something here. So I wrote my doctoral proposal, and one of my advisors said to me, Well, your doctoral proposal's very unusual, Diana. Most students start with a little nugget, and from that little lemma, they expand outward. You, on the other hand, have made the whole system, the whole overview of what this is, and then you're going to find it. Well, I did find it, and I later read that doctoral proposal, and it was just uncanny how close it was to exactly what I had found.
So for the layperson,
Yes.
Chaos seems to mean that there is no order or pattern, but musical variation engines, your very own, what do you call it?
I call them a MIDI variation engine and an audio variation engine. But I think I hear where you're going with this, Heather, and it's very perceptive. You hear that word chaos, just as you said, and you think it's random. And so chaos actually manifests itself in nature. And it's often associated with turbulence in water, turbulence in the atmosphere. And just as you said, you would think that these systems, these chaotic systems, are random, but actually they're deterministic. They can be modeled by systems of equations. And one such system of equations is the Lorentz system, discovered by Edward Lorenz, who you could think of as really one of the first prime movers of chaos theory. I love those Lorentz equations, and I studied them. And as with all dissipative chaotic systems, you can find that there's a very distinguishing property about solutions to those equations. They're very sensitive to where you start them. In other words, you'll start a simulation of these equations. They'll start tracing out a trajectory. And so start one of those solutions at one point, but then start another one close to it. And you would think they would end up at the same spot. They do not. So they trace out the same image in a sense. And yet they do so by differing paths. This idea of similarities and differences is very tied into the idea of musical variation. So in musical variation, too much similarity is going to deflate interest, but too much difference will obliterate any connection to the originals. And so I realized that it was this sensitive property, the sensitive dependence on initial conditions that was already offering these similarities and differences. And I just kept having this image of lassoing it, just somehow lassoing this wonderful property and using it.
So through the language of engineering, you found the language perhaps as well as the physics that fundamentally underlie the exact language by which you can specify the characteristics of that. Is that sort of getting at what I'm hearing?
Yes, that there was a natural mechanism for variability built right into that Lorentz system of equations.
So you do mashups.
Yes.
How does that then take us there?
Yes. So it's so interesting because mashups are actually a form of musical variation. Bach and his family often made mashups for fun.
Really?
And also his last variation of the Goldberg variations is a mashup.
Who knew?
I know. It's amazing. So I wanted very much to explore mashups, and I was working on that and woke up one day. I knew I was close. You get this feeling you're very close to a breakthrough on how to do this. But I woke up and there it was. And ironically, it was the day after I had had my annual review with the dean of the faculty at my college, Olin College of Engineering. And he had kept asking me, so what's going on with this musical variations project, Diana? And I said, well, I'm working on it. I know I'm close, but I'm stuck a little. And he said to me, well, Diana, how do you unstuck yourself? And I said, by thinking musically. And so I don't know what he was thinking, but I thought, shoot, I better get close or closer pretty soon. And sure enough, the next day I woke up and it unraveled before my ears and eyes. And it was complete musical approach in terms of thinking.
So your process is very artistic and intuitive, and it comes out that way as a result of your meticulous attention to all the science behind it.
Yes, I prep myself by really learning as much as I can about what's going on in the science and in the math, because I want to speak that language. See, I think it's really important to speak it. And I know what it means to speak a language deeply because I've had that experience with music for so many years. So it sets a very high bar, but it was what I aimed for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And your tools for invention, if just to sum this up, you are a programmer?
Of course I know how to program, but because we all do. We all have to know that. But I come up with the algorithms. I come up with a way of how to do this. I write those algorithms down. And then I have a student, whomever it is at the time, and I said, here's this algorithm. Can you program this up?
I see. I see.
Yes.
So you have, right, you lay out sort of the blueprint.
Specifics.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, does this play into the website where people can make up their own mashups? Is this the result?
Absolutely. And when I woke up that morning,
Yeah.
After a meeting with the dean the day before, I wrote it all out for the programmer, and I went and saw him and just said, hey, can you program this up? And he looked at it. Yeah. You can think of it as the recipe. You have to write out the recipe for how to do this new idea of this mashup. And I used basically what I invented for my doctoral thesis, the chaotic mapping, but I used it in a very new way. I know these songs, the pop songs, and I love them as individual songs, but there's a whole nother realm when you take them and put them together. All of a sudden, in a certain way, you're listening more intently because this mashup is new to you and you have not heard it. The mashup just was something I had to do. It fired my imagination, and I said, I have to find a way to do this. And I believed that, my prior work was going to be the seed for it. And in fact, it was.
And listeners could make their own mashups, right?
Yes, you can select song 1, select song 2, and then.
Yeah.
Yep.
So let's listen to one. Which one do you want to introduce us to?
Well, I really always love the combination of Evacuate the Dance Floor by Cascada and Set Fire to the Ring by Adele, because they're such different pieces. It's something else to hear them together.
So let's take a listen.
I like to move it, come and give me some more. Watch me getting physical, out of control. There's people watching me, I never miss a beat. Still the night, kill the lights, feel it under your skin.
Amazing. So if I go to the website and I choose 2 songs and I hit submit and then it creates something, and if I do it again at a different time, does it create something different? Or
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Okay.
This is more of a demo website. It's an experimental site, and I actually am still working on where it's going from here. So I have that up there so people get an idea of what's going on, but it's not the whole picture.
So we're going to put the link in our show notes below. So listeners, you can click on the link below to Canto Vario, and you can actually make up your own mashup. And what makes this technology or this invention different than what's out there? Like you say, it was different and unique.
This is probably the only one that's using a chaos engine underneath it. So that's somewhat distinctive. Sometimes it's not so much that you are going to have this great new app that's going to set the world on fire. Sometimes it's really the joy of the process. It's bringing something to life, and it works. Of course, many times, leading up to all of this, there are things that just don't work, and you're getting closer. And that's why I said, I feel I'm close, but, I needed a little shot, and I got it.
Right. So it's not so much the destination, what I hear you saying.
Yeah.
It's the journey.
Oh, the
getting
journey.
there.
Oh, the journey is fabulous. But it's that way, I think, as a performer and as a composer. And it's that process of what I call being in the tunnel. So you're in a tunnel, you do not see the solution yet. You do not see the finished product. It's just not there. But you know what you want and where you're headed.
Yeah.
And it's a very exciting and unnerving place at the same time. And I really like that place. And then gradually you start to see the light. And oh my God, that just made everything worth it.
I love listening to you speak about your creative process. I guess I'm wondering, do you start with questions that you ask initially to make sure that you're in the right tunnel even?
Oh, I never thought about being in the right tunnel.
Question for you about, I don't know if you've seen the Pixar movie, Soul.
Yes, I did say it.
So for those who have seen it or haven't seen it, there's a scene in Soul where a couple of times it happens where he's in the zone, the pianist is in the zone.
A jazz musician.
And the world falls away and it's just flowing. Yeah. I know you don't say that you're in a zone per se, that's what you said before, but is it similar for us that are not to understand your inner world? Is it you get in this tunnel and you're like happening
You
there?
get in that tunnel, at least I'm speaking personally, and that's all there is. Sometimes someone has walked in and I jump because I was so concentrated. I would also say that it's a beautiful place to be.
So do you find that your instinct all those years ago when you found that book, that it has led you to have the right tools that you need right now to work on your multiplicity of projects, your background as a trained musician, as well as an electrical engineer? Does it then allow you to play so that you can work on musical variation engines, as well as I hope we can have you talk about your variation concert projects?
Yes, that journal that I happened to pick up, it started everything. Once you start experiencing these two languages, worlds open up to you that would never have occurred in the past. And those worlds are beautiful. And also the imagination that you start to bring to all facets, frankly, of your creative work, but also I would say to life.
But it comes down to that you listen to your inner voice that was saying, you need to do this.
Yes.
Go down this tunnel. And so to me, that's a superpower, having the ability to listen to yourself in that way. Did that come natural? Did you have it since your child, or is that something you developed?
I've known her, that inner voice, for a very long time. And she has opened doors for me emotionally and intellectually and imaginatively. I'm curious. And that just couldn't get shut down. And I think staying open, many people talk about being open to possibility. They're really right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I was a kid, I didn't know that, but I was curious. And actually, I was into science as a kid. I was into science. I was into music. And I had a mother who just said, you can give something 110% and give it that. And if it doesn't work out, you can really walk away and not feel, any compunction about that. And she made me fearless because I found myself, okay, I listened to my mother.
And she was right.
And she was right.
Yeah.
As she was in so many things. And so I face a situation and I think, oh gosh, let's just give it 110%. And unbelievably, it would work out. So I've taken so many risks in life. And I started to believe that when you walk out on a limb, that the universe, the gods, whatever is these higher powers, that they smile on you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God helps those who help themselves.
And actually you find within yourself resources you never knew you even had.
Yeah.
If I may then ask about Olin's conductorless orchestra, I love listening to the compositions and the students perform in the YouTube videos. Could you talk about that? And you talked about the intrinsic individual habits and drive that successful artists and inventors need. So, how does it work when you are teaching students to work with one another?
Well, the beautiful thing about the Olin Conductorless Orchestra, or OCO for short, is that effectively it's a lab for leadership, teamwork, and communication. It is not that I am teaching them that. They are learning by doing exactly those wonderful skills. The students actually run the rehearsals, and I'm the guide on the side. I step in when necessary. I'm listening. I'll flag things at times. Sometimes students say, "Oh, you come in too much." Other students will say, "We need more of you." So it's quite a balance there, but it's all in good faith. In other words, I take their comments very seriously, and I think they take mine as well. What I also do is, because we're a small school, we do not have a standard instrumentation in our orchestra. So, for example, we've had 4 violins, no violas, and 1 cello, and then the lowest brass or wind instrument would have been an alto saxophone. And the students are choosing pieces that require really low brass. And somehow I have to take this very unbalanced ensemble and give it a group sound. So actually, for many years, I have made reorchestrations of the music they select, which is typically huge romantic works for 90 plus symphony players. And I will get that down to anywhere between 12 and 22 players. But most importantly, I have to balance very unusual combinations of instruments, and instruments that don't even appear in a standard orchestra. So I'm always writing a piano part because we have a pianist. And I've pulled a lot of tricks out of my hat just through experimentation over many years.
Diana, would you tell us what the Olin Conductorless Orchestra is?
Yes, what does that really mean, conductorless? It means that the students rehearse without a conductor and they perform without a conductor. And the conductor would usually be telling them what to do and how to stay together and follow the beat. And they develop tremendous musicianship skills. They have to hear across the room, to stay with someone that they're playing with. So it develops those skills in them tremendously. Olin has the only conductorless orchestra composed of engineers in the world. And a lot of the performances are up on YouTube. There's one of Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue in its entirety.
So beautiful.
Thank you so much. That was really something, because if you look at that orchestra, you realize that, what? There's no trumpet. There's no clarinet.
Yeah.
And those are really big.
You don't miss it.
I had to really, I fine-tuned that orchestration to suit that orchestra. And at one point, the oboist came to me and said, I've got too much to play. I'm running out of, strength, etc. So I rewrote his part, and it still was okay. But I got it down to its essence for these. I believe we had about 22 players for that.
And do you think these students, who perhaps are aware of chaos theory, as you are, that it doesn't descend into chaos?
Sometimes it does. I remember in the spring of 23, we were at the end of our season, and all of a sudden, the navigators of the orchestra were announcing, as a reminder to the orchestra, that we have a concert coming up on May 9th. And the pianist of the orchestra said, wait, what date is that? And they said, well, it's May 9th. She said, I'll be in China. All of a sudden, this became total chaos because
the piano is
essential. The piano was a really important part in this orchestration. And it was a small orchestra that year, just 10 players. There's a lot of ebb and flow with this orchestra because at different times people take time away or there's a class conflict or whatever. For that particular orchestra, I also had to turn 2 of the flute players into percussionists because as the orchestrator, I couldn't hear this piece without having some percussion at the opening. And so I made them into a timpanist and a bass drum player and then had them run back to their seats and get into the flute parts. Now, the pianist, I had also given the glockenspiel to play. So when I had to step in on short notice and learn all those parts and then play the glockenspiel, which I'd never played in my life, that was really something. You would think the glockenspiel, because it's laid out like a piano keyboard, would be very easy for a pianist to right away adapt to. But every single key is silver. And so I had such...
Where are the black ones?
I know. I just miss my black and white keys so much. That's what I was used to.
Wow.
Yeah.
Listening to you talk about rearranging classic pieces that are meant for way more musicians and instruments than you actually have in this orchestra, do you follow the same principles of composition as well as electrical engineering that informed you to then create cantaveria and mashups that sound right?
I've done 140 of these reorchestrations, or they're also called arrangements for this orchestra. And I sit quietly and I just imagine what can be with what I have.
Yeah.
And I know where their sweet spots are and how I can use those. And over the years, have tried things, they've worked. And so it became another device for me to use as I'm working these orchestrations.
I'd like to listen to the Gershwin piece. Could you introduce it?
Yes. First of all, you have to understand the students select the music, and they wanted to play this piece. So it was a good orchestra, and I went along with it, even though we had no trumpet, no clarinet, and somehow the score called for 25 wind and brass instruments, and we only had 10. So what I ended up doing was I would blend the oboe with a flute to create a quasi-trumpet sound, and I did a lot of other combinations like that to try to bring this piece to life, though we didn't have the clarinet and no trumpet. And of course, that trumpet solo in the middle part is just so glorious. So I kept changing it each time it came so that the orchestration would keep changing. That's something that I do a lot of. I also, at times, will pare down the orchestration so that it can rise up to a huge moment. Because when you're only dealing with about 22 players and it was written for much larger orchestra, you don't have that surge of sound that really reacts so emotionally with the players as well as with the audience. So I had to come up with ways to create that, almost pull a sleight of hand at times to get the effects that I knew the original would do. Yeah, the students did a great job on this piece.
So it's a piece of An American in Paris. Let's take a listen. So the students, they have to really pay attention to what's going on the other side of the room.
Oh, yes.
And this
each
is
other.
A lot when the music gets intense, and this is part of the training, right?
It is, and they're good musicians, and they like growing, and they recognize that this is a way they really grow.
How do you think their engineering education perhaps helps this?
Well, actually, it might be that the music helps the engineering education because so many of these students claim music and this orchestra as the balance to their engineering studies. And in fact, one student, very dear student, always had on her laptop, no music, no life. So it's part of them. It's part of their DNA. They've got to have it.
Do you relate to
Oh,
that?
gosh.
I know it's an obvious question. But,
Yeah. But I would also say I love engineering too. And that having both of them in your life, you go from one to the other, and sometimes they're both together, but it's like you're entering a whole nother world. Everything is fresh again. It's tremendous.
So how does it work for you to be a professor at an engineering college in music? And, did you create a new department? How does that?
Oh, gosh. No, all the praise has to go to Olin College of Engineering. At Olin, I'm professor of electrical engineering and music, and then music program director. However, that title, electrical engineering and music, was my title when I was first hired as an assistant professor. And they wanted this interdisciplinary slant in their professors. And so they were looking for someone like me. I was so fortunate to have found them and for them to have found me. I owe Olin so much. They gave me a long rope, and I thrive on that long rope. I think most people do. And you could create, you could run and do things. And I'm not the only faculty member that was able to do that. Many of us have done exactly that.
Wow.
Yeah.
And following that, if I may, here you are at Radcliffe, spending time as a fellow with people from all the disciplines and professions. How has that been?
Oh, gosh. Radcliffe is a place unto itself. This year has been a dream come true, and I have wanted every single day to count and have so far done exactly that. This opportunity does not happen every day, and my appreciation for it just deepens every day.
What's so great about it?
Well, first of all, the staff is fabulous here. They're so helpful. Anything that needs to be addressed, they're right on it. They really want to see you be able to do what you came here to do. My fellow fellows, so interesting from so many different disciplines. I've been to every single talk that they've given and wouldn't even think of missing one. They've been fabulous. And as human beings, they're warm and engaging, wonderful to speak with. I just can't thank enough the Radcliffe Institute for what it offers all of us. And of course, our students, just a joy to work with our students.
So tell us about your Radcliffe project.
All right. So we've talked a lot about the Musical Variations Project. That's part one of the project. Part two of the project is a variation concert. And what is a variation concert? Well, where you sit will determine which variation of a given piece that you hear. And the first variation concert that my colleague Kevin Brown and I did was actually in the Wellesley College Concert Series in 2018. Kevin is a remarkable individual. We were graduate students at MIT together, which is how we met. After graduating MIT with his doctorate, he went on to start a company, Brown Innovations, which is basically devoted to focused audio technology. So through the years, I told him about this idea, and he said, well, we're not quite there yet. And we'd return to it every year, and not there. But finally, actually in 2017, he said, Diana, I think we're there. So I wrote this piece in 2018 called Parallel Lives, Distant Mirrors. And this piece explored life in Iraq and in America as a result of the Iraq War. So I had a 5-movement piece, of which the last movement, Catharsis, is a variation concert. This means where you sit will determine which variation of a soundscape you will hear. So the left side hears one part of that soundscape, and the right side hears another soundscape. Now, everybody is hearing the live pianist, who is Jung Sung Lee, an excellent, fine pianist. And we can play for you the live piano part first, so you have an idea of what it is. And then we can also play for you what the left side soundscape and right side soundscapes sounded like. Here's the live piano part. This is the left side soundscape. The Associated Press recordings of the very start of the Iraq War, where a reporter was actually crouched underneath a hotel window with his microphone out the window.
Amazing.
This is the right side soundscape.
He was a happy-go-lucky kid. When he was in T-ball, one time he hit the ball, went to second base, and then turned around and said, "Mom, I made half of a home run." That was kind of how he looked at life, his cup half full. He always wanted to be in the military, even back then. I mean, we'd pass a convoy and he'd just go nuts. So when he was 24, he enlisted and then was sent to Iraq for a year. And he told me some stories, but he said, "There's a lot of stories that I can't tell you, Mom." He didn't sleep well. He had nightmares. That twinkle in his eye was gone.
There's a lot behind this piece. It's all explained on the website.
So we're going to put the link in our show notes below. Is there anything that you would like to say, Diana, that we haven't covered?
I know there are many more tunnels that you're working on,
Totally.
but
Really, it's just been a pleasure talking with you, Heather, and with you, Alan. And Anna, thank you in the back there. It's so simpatico. So thank you.
Great. Thanks for coming and taking the time with us, Diana. It's been so fascinating to understand your world
Thank you.
and your journey and
you.
your creative process.
you've been so generous sharing your wonderful, beautiful mind with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was fun. It really was. I enjoyed it.
That concludes today's program.
Born Curious is brought to you by Harvard Radcliffe Institute. Our producer is Alan Grazioso. Kevin Grady, Anna Song, Lily Roberts, Emerson Prond, and Cabin 3 Media provided editing and production support. Many thanks to Jane Huber for editorial support. And we are your co-hosts. I'm Ivelisse Estrada.
And I'm Heather Min.
Our website, where you can listen to all our episodes, is radcliffe.harvard.edu/borncurious.
If you have feedback, you can email us at info@radcliffe.harvard.edu.
You can follow Harvard Radcliffe Institute on Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Threads. And as always, you can find Born Curious wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for learning with us.
And join us next time.